My name is Jessica Mugler. I live in Washington, D.C., and I was a student attorney in the Rising for Justice Housing Clinic in fall 2020.
My name is Selena Aldape. I live here in Washington, D.C., and I'm an attorney at Rising for Justice.
My name is Leily Santos. I'm from Honduras, and I live in Washington, D.C.
I heard about Rising for Justice through my law school, George Washington Law School. It was one of the clinics that they offered, and I'm very passionate about housing law and tenant defense.
I went to Columbia for undergrad, I went to Yale for law school, and then I was lucky enough to get a fellowship here at Rising for Justice as my first job out of law school.
When I was like 14, 15, I started hearing these stories of coming to America and that you can be successful, go to school, and be able to help your family, do something better for your life.
My experience during Rising for Justice was really my first time being the lead and taking charge on cases. I was able to present evidence before the court. I was able to give an opening statement and cross-examine a landlord before court. I was able to work hand in hand with clients. And I was able to present testimony before the DC Council on a bill protecting renters. And without Rising for Justice, none of that would have happened.
If you are facing eviction, if you are living in an apartment where the landlord is refusing to make repairs, and if you can't afford an attorney, the court is not going to appoint an attorney for you.
I have two younger brothers. At that time, they were 16 and 17. I helped them come here. I have custody of my younger brothers.
When Leily came to the United States, she moved into her uncle's apartment in the District of Columbia. When he moved out, she took over paying the rent, and in that apartment, she built a life for herself and her two school-age brothers, whom she supported. Eventually, the building was sold to a new owner who wanted to kick out all the existing tenants in order to jack up the rent.
And they wouldn't accept any request that I put in for any maintenance. I met David, and then I was introduced to Rising for Justice, and I was so grateful to have a program that was available for people like me.
She was living in deplorable conditions. Her oven didn't work, her shower didn't work, her bathroom had no door, and she was dealing with a bedbug infestation so severe you could actually see bedbugs walking around in broad daylight. When she complained to her landlord, not only did they refuse to fix the problem, but they stopped accepting her rent and told her that she would have to leave.
I was paying rent and I had all the receipts, and so I had proof that they didn't accept my payments.
Leily told me that after 15 years in this country, she was ready to fight for her rights. So when we weren't able to work things out with her landlord, my colleague Peter Posada and I took her case to trial before a jury. For 2 days, we helped Leily tell her story to the jury and showed them the conditions that she'd been living with.
He was like my hero because he prepared me for court. He said everything's gonna be fine. He also gave me the opportunity to speak on behalf of myself, and so it made me feel safe.
So I remember one client that I worked with throughout the entire semester was a woman living in a basically unlivable apartment. She had roaches, mice, no heat during the winter.
It was a Friday. It was about 4 p.m. and a client came in. She had actually been sued for eviction. She had actually won her case, but her landlord had tried to evict her anyway by changing the locks and making it so that she was unable to access her apartment.
And we were able to negotiate successfully with the landlord by the end of the semester for him to fix those issues and to get heat in the apartment, and for her to stay in the apartment with some rent back as well.
So that Friday afternoon, the client came in. I helped her file an emergency motion, which was decided by the judge the same day. And we were able to get an order from the judge that required the landlord to let her back into that apartment so that she would have somewhere to sleep that night.
At least in my experience, usually landlords are represented by counsel and tenants are often not. And Rising for Justice is trying to help balance that out. They're trying to provide representation for those who need it most and for really the most marginalized and vulnerable communities.
When the jury saw the conditions in Leily's apartment, it ruled in her favor, giving her a 90% reduction in rent, rolling back several years' worth of rent increases that her landlord had taken, and most importantly, affirming her right to stay in the only home that she'd known in this country.
I was so nervous when the judge actually gave the verdict, and they say, well, that we have won the case. I was so happy, I was so relieved because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Rising for Justice is there every hour that the court is open. So whenever somebody comes to the courthouse in need of legal assistance with a housing problem, Rising for Justice is there.
You know, the client is trusting you to handle not only their housing situation, but their way to pay for the housing situation as well. So I didn't take that lightly.
Working in housing law is not something I had really considered for myself when I was in law school, but I came here and I just saw the need and I saw the dedication that the attorneys who work here bring to the field. And that has really inspired me to continue doing housing work and continue doing civil legal services.
Rising for Justice laid the foundation of what I hope to be a lifelong career in tenant defense, representing tenants in eviction cases.
The most important thing for my brothers and I now is that we have a roof on our head, and so grateful that David helped us through Rising for Justice.
For me, for my career, and for the clients, the difference is Rising for Justice.
For me, for my students, for our clients, the difference has been Rising for Justice.
La diferencia para mí y mis hermanos ha sido Rising for Justice.